Good morning. It's yet another gray and rainy, dim December morning, and I wanted to talk about love. Recently, in a private session, someone was questioning Umlam. I believe it was about universal love, and it's a very beautiful line of inquiry. And I thought I'd also get some channel perspectives on this, but first, it's something that I've been encountering and thinking about a lot in the stuff I've been reading. Recently, I read the Disease Unto Death, one of the more famous works of Kierkegaard, and he speaks of, well, he's a very convoluted thinker. So, and he sits somewhere between theology and philosophy and poetry. But through all these mazes of thought, he arrives at that necessity of having a passionate surrender to God, and he actually likens it to the feeling of being in love. And I think it's very beautiful how this notion turns up in different places and different times, and of course in different guises, but it seems to hold a perennial key. So in the idea of abiding in the Tao, which is of course Taoism, or the Indian practice of bhaktism, which is devotional practice. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna speaks of bhakti yoga as one of the four yogas which will help the practitioner in attain enlightenment, to be short, or bring him to his true self. And it is the idea that you somehow surrender your own will to the absolute, and it's very beautiful. It can be thought of as every breath and every sense, every experience actually being an act of devotion and a prayer to the sublime, which can be approached in the image of Krishna. It also, of course, turns up in Christianity, in the commandments of love, to love your neighbor and to love your God, which is of course also an image of surrender, but most beautifully and significantly, I almost find it expressed in the Sufi poets. And I remember in a former video I was talking about the surrender experience I had, where I kind of broke down in the middle of this awakening process and just gave up, and then awoke the next day. And it's interesting, that day I had been reading in Eliad's The History of Religious Ideas about the Sufi poets, and there was a quote by Al-Arabiya, one of the earliest, I believe, who says that when I am with others, I call him my Lord, but alone I know him as my beloved. And it's a very, very beautiful and strong idea that you can actually find the purest, most affectionate sentiments within your heart, that direction of pure benevolence towards something, and then direct it to the will of the absolute, which is ineffable and only to be approached as something that has no shape or no form or is unmanifest. And that movement of, well, being enamored with the world and then turning it into something that is actually permanent because it has no shape but is the shape of everything, is a very beautiful devotional practice. And it's of course also the way that you avoid getting into to some of these pitfalls around the law of attraction, for instance. Because essentially, if you remember the image of it's a poem by Goethe, but the image of Mickey in Fantasia as the sorceress apprentice, where he of course he wants the And if you haven't seen it, then I suppose it's on YouTube. But the sorcerer is out, and he doesn't want to carry water for him, so he gives life to the broom, and then he can't stop it from bringing more water, and then he keeps cleaning it into smaller and smaller pieces, and it turns into absolute disaster for him, of course. And that's that idea that as soon as you direct your will towards something in the world, it's you're wanting the world to attain a shape that it can't actually hold, because time is impermanent, and intentions are usually also driven by a lot of unconscious wants and desires, such as Mickey's, partly his laziness, and he doesn't want to carry the water, and partly his arrogance and his insolence, that he thinks he can wield the power of the sorcerer. So there is that double point, that actually you need to surrender to the master, in a sense, and the master is, of course, the uppermost part of you, the higher self, or the soul, or the atman, or that thing which is in unity with the divine, and which constantly knows what is going on, and also has a very clear plan of where it actually wants you to go, if you would surrender to that experience of its love, because it is reciprocal. And that is, of course, the great mystic discovery, is that when you turn your love towards the divine, it actually loves you back. um, so with that talk about love, I feel we should hear from the 12th dimensional Quanta, and hear what they have to say about universal love. As much as we are love, we bring you love, and we awaken the love within you, which is your entire being in its purified form. We are the 12 of the 12th dimension, the interdimensional Quanta, making up everything, seeing and knowing everything, perceiving all things in the minute of everyday life. This beloved human questions us on love. It is but a word, as you know, that points to an underlying experience. You see the entire creation, as much as its maker itself was built out of this component. Love is not an emotion in human hearts. It is a perception of the highest of physical realities. You would not be able to perceive it in its unmanifest form from where you stand, but you could approach it as a pitch or a tone that is so high in pitch that it actually ceases to oscillate and becomes unified in its oppositional dance. Before there were two, there was one. And this one, you could think of it as two opposites so intertwined, so interwoven in their organisms that their functions of life are one and sustain each other. The opposites of everything sit in this major organism as heartbeats, releasing blood into the cosmic body. There is an expression of beauty in all opposites when seen from the perspective of the divine. They are as opposing patterns in a woven cloth. The threads moving in different directions bring unity and strength, integrity and beauty to that piece of cloth which you wrap around you and you find warmth and shelter in. Notice how you humans perceive this covering as a pleasant experience, something that calms you and reminds you of a state in body and mind that sustained you when you were in the womb, and that sustains you when you pass from this life. Know that death is a release into the deep covering. It is a release into the arms of the all, catching you and suffusing you with life and understanding. We know you know this to be true. We know that in your hearts you could not live if you did not see this value in life itself. Your cells could not function if they were not essentially comfortable in their organic processes. Precisely as the High One of the Divine is content with all the runnings and going-ons of the universe, with all the entendres, uncoverings, discoveries, and new confusions that blanket experience as it runs its course in the mind of the divine. We want to reach you with this message of comfort. We would extend to you hope, but hope is in and of itself an idea that describes that love is yet to come and that it has not yet arrived. We encourage you, we almost dare you to go to your garden or kitchen and pick up a piece of your favorite fruit, taste it and savor it, and then tell us and tell yourself that there is no love in the universe, and see how hollow it rings, that everything sustains everything else is a truth that transcends understanding. And so in this nourishing knowledge that can be comprehended best with your heart, rest and be safe again, beloved, dear human children.